9 spine-chilling midnight shift encounters revealed. Terrifying real stories that will haunt you. The fluorescent lights hummed eerily overhead, casting a sterile glow over the barren aisles of the Maplewood Convenience Mart. Sarah, a tired 35-year-old mother of 2, had taken to working the midnight shift, believing it would shield her children from the crushing weight of their financial troubles. As the hands of the clock inched toward midnight, the silence wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket, amplifying the unsettling chill that nipped at her spine. It was just after she stocked the shelves and restocked the coffee machine that the first text arrived. "I see you on North Oak every evening, don't think you're safe." Her heart raced. It must be a joke, she thought, dismissing it with a nervous chuckle. But doubt gnawed at her, its sharp teeth sinking into the pit of her stomach. North Oak was only a few streets away, and the anonymity of midnight made it easy for fear to fester. Night after night, a figure began to haunt her view outside the glass door. An unkempt man lingered there, a solitary shadow bobbing slightly, his eyes reflecting the light like animal predation. When her fingertips grazed the smooth, cold surface of her phone, the dread settled heavier on her chest. The security cameras suddenly malfunctioned, looping eerie footage of the empty aisles and flickering lights, making the quietude seem louder. What was happening? The weight of her anxiety clawed at the edges of her rationality. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As her shifts dragged on, she became entrapped in paranoia. The police dismissed her concerns after she reported the lurking figure, advising her to stop the overreacting. It was a joke, they said, that the neighborhood had become paranoid. But with every hour spent behind the counter, her veneer of safety dissolved. One night, searching for spare light bulbs in the back room, she discovered a trapdoor concealed beneath a musty rug. Ignited by an impulse of dread, she opened it. The air was thick with dust, secrets staining her vision like leftover memories. Old crates filled with forgotten clippings lay scattered, yellowed paper whispering stories of women who had vanished and Maplewood echoes of lives flickering out during the witching hours. Was she truly safe? As she peered closer, recognition flooded her mind. The photos looked like her. The faces were all too familiar. Her heart raced, and she stumbled back, the world blurring around her. The man outside was not just a stranger. He was connected to Maplewood, a name engraved in its dark history. She felt watched. When she finally faced him one fateful night, it wasn't just about survival. It was a collision with a horrifying reality that threatened to shatter everything she had believed about her once idyllic hometown. Why was he obsessed with her? With every heartbeat, she sensed the dread creeping back. The dawn might not bring safety, but more shadows lurking to unveil the truth. Would she escape this nightmare or discover that Maplewood's facade hid something far more terrifying? The clock struck midnight, igniting a sense of urgency in the air. Sarah's palms were sweaty as she stared at the door, the darkness beyond yawning like an abyss. The faint silhouette of the man loomed just outside, swaying slightly, his presence a constant reminder that her fears were no longer confined to her imagination. The fluorescent lights above flickered, amplifying the shadows in the corners of the store, pushing her anxiety to a breaking point. She tried to focus on her tasks, organizing chips and sodas on the shelves, but her eyes kept darting to the door. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled with unease. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to whisper secrets, a disembodied voice urging her to run. Instead, she became paralyzed by curiosity and terror, two forces wrestling for control within her. Was it just her mind playing tricks? She picked up her phone, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through her messages again. The chilling text message lingered, each word clawing at her sanity. "I see you on North Oak every evening, don't think you're safe." The image of the lurking figure consumed her. Who was he? What did he want? As she pondered, a loud crash shattered the silence, sending a jolting wave of fear crashing over her. Her heart pounded like a drum as she dashed to the source of the noise, her breath quickening. It came from the back room, where she had discovered the hidden trapdoor just nights before. Despite every fiber in her body screaming at her to flee, she moved forward, drawn to whatever danger lay ahead. The air grew oppressive, thick and heavy, swirling with the smell of mildew and something metallic like rust. As she entered the dimly lit space, she gasped. Boxes had toppled, spilling their contents across the floor. But it wasn't the mess that horrified her more, it was what lay atop the heap of debris. A photograph stared back at her, its edges frayed and faded, the image warped by age. It was unmistakably her smiling, carefree, cheerful at a picnic she barely remembered. But beneath her image, crudely written in smudged ink, were the same words from the text message. "You're not safe." Panic coursed through her veins as she snatched the photograph, her mind racing. There were others like her. How deep did this horror run? Was her face a mere pawn in a twisted game she was yet to comprehend? She clutched the photo tightly, feeling the splintering wood of the box beneath her fingers. With every heartbeat, the chill seeped further into her bones. "Sarah," a voice drifted through the darkness. A cold whisper that slithered beneath her skin, sending icy tendrils of fear spiraling into her chest. "I've been waiting for you." She turned, her eyes wide and frantic. The man she'd seen lingering outside was inching closer, his face now illuminated in the flickering light. His eyes sat sunken deep, shadows playing tricks on her perception. But it was unmistakable, the familiarity in his gaze sent her mind racing, shifting through forgotten memories. "Who are you?" she croaked, her voice barely a whisper. "That's the question, isn't it? You've almost pieced it together." His smile widened, revealing a mouth that shouldn't have been able to form such a grin. She stumbled backward, clutching the photograph as if it could shield her from the truth waiting to unfold. "Remember, Sarah, every choice leads you closer to the shadows." The lights above flickered again, plunging her into darkness for a moment that felt eternal. When they flickered back to life, he was gone. Breathless, Sarah clutched the photograph tightly, her mind racing. She had to know the truth about the man, and what Maplewood had hidden beneath its surface. But could she survive the journey into the dark web that ensnared her life? Each tick of the clock taunted her. What revelations awaited her at the stroke of midnight? Sarah's fight for survival had just begun, and she didn't know whether it was the clock or the shadows that was truly counting down. Sarah stumbled back, heart racing as she clutched the photograph tighter. The sharp sting of fear coursed through her. What game was being played, and why was she a player in it? The memory of the man's words curled in her mind like smoke, every choice leading her closer to darkness. The store felt like it was closing in around her. She glanced at the clock, the hands sneered at her, mocking her as the second hand ticked closer to 12. She had little time. She had to figure out what this man wanted, who he was. With shaking hands, she shoved the photo deep into her pocket. The jarring memory of that happy picnic haunted her. No one should hold a photo of her so intimately without her consent. She whispered a silent prayer, forcing herself to take a step back into the open store. The aisles stretched out, eerily quiet. The fluorescent lights above flickered again, drawing her gaze to the shadows. Were they deepening? The fear took on a life of its own, crawling under her skin, urging her to leave. And yet, she felt an undeniable pull, a compulsion to confront whatever horror hid behind the facade of her everyday life. Suddenly, the door chimed, the sound slicing through the silence like a knife. Sarah's body tensed. Who could be entering at this hour? She turned, her breath hitching as she saw the man again. But he was different this time. He moved with purpose, stride deliberate. His demeanor was menacing, but there was a twisted confidence about him that made her equally terrified and intrigued. "Sarah," he called, voice echoing in the empty space. "I've brought something for you." Her instincts screamed for her to hide, to run. But she stood frozen, a moth to his flame. "What do you want?" she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. "To help you. You need to know the truth." The man gestured toward the back room where shadows loomed thickest. They hide in darkness, and it's time you see what's lurking. As he spoke, the air crackled with tension. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to flee, but the unanswered questions held her captive. What did he mean? Were there more photographs? More pieces to this grotesque puzzle? Breath coming in shallow gasps, she swallowed hard. If you know something about them, tell me. They'll only come to claim you if you stay in the light, Sarah, he said, stepping closer. Take a step into darkness, and the truth will reveal itself. Her heart raced as the shadows danced around her. Should she trust him? But as the minutes slipped away, one thought consumed her. What if he had answers? Sarah felt the weight of the photograph in her pocket. Could facing her fears give her the power to uncover the hidden truths of her life? She hesitated, glancing back at the door, wondering if she'd be safe outside. But the lure of knowledge held her tightly. She stepped back toward the room, her mind racing with fear and curiosity. With her heart hammering against her ribcage, she plunged into the darkness. As she entered the suffocating shadows, she heard the door creak ominously behind her, and then nothing but silence. A cold sweat dripped down her back as she felt a presence behind her once again. Welcome to the real game, Sarah, but was there a way to win? The clock continued to tick, each chime echoing her heartbeat. What raw, terrifying truths waited for her among the whispers of shadows? The darkness closed in around Sarah like a heavy fog, the air thick with tension. She clutched the photograph in her pocket as if it were a talisman against whatever lurked in the shadows. The man's voice lingered in her mind, echoing welcome to the real game. What game? Her skin crawled as she strained to see through the dimness. Sarah, the man said again, his voice dropping into a conspiratorial hush that made her heart pound. You need to understand what you're dealing with. They don't take kindly to light. Who are they? Her voice trembled, lost in the damp air, swallowed by the surrounding gloom. She could barely make out his figure. He stood just beyond the faint beam of light from the flickering bulb above. Those who linger in the shadows, he said, stepping closer. His eyes glinted like sharp knives in the half-light. They've taken more than you realize. More. Panic clawed at her throat. What do you mean? He moved even closer, the air growing colder around them. Your past is festering, Sarah. The photograph holds a key, but it will bring you nothing but suffering if you don't face it. She felt the photo press against her thigh, almost vibrating with malevolence. I don't understand. What's wrong with the picture? With an impatient swipe, he motioned toward the back of the room. That's where the truth lies, but know this: the truth is a beast. It has teeth, and it bites. The second hand on the clock ticked menacingly, urging her to make a choice. Sweat pulled at her temples. She wanted to scream, to run back out into the safety of the store's light. But the ominous promise of answers pulled her deeper into the darkness. What do I have to do? She asked, her voice breaking. Face your fear, he said, his tone chilling. They're waiting, Sarah. They're hungry. Breathing heavily, she took a trembling step toward the back room. Each step echoed, reverberating through the suffocating gloom. Flickering overhead lights cast grotesque shadows that seemed to twist and writhe against the walls, taunting her with movements of something just out of sight. As she neared the door, a low growl rippled through the air, freezing her in place. It felt ancient, primal. The faint whiff of decay hung in the darkness. Do you hear them? The man asked, voice softer now, laced with a strange reverence. The lost? The ones who fell into shadow? Fear gripped her throat as the whispers grew louder, swirling around her ears, forming words that made shivers race down her spine. Help us with every ounce of courage. She reached for the doorknob, cold and slick with fear. She could feel the shadows writhe against her, alive with a hunger she couldn't comprehend. You have the power, Sarah. But the truth comes at a cost, the man warned, stepping back, melting into the dark like a phantom. Are you willing to pay? Her chest tightened, heart thundering as she stared into the abyss that awaited her. What's the cost? A chilling silence enveloped her, thick enough to taste. The soft growls and whispers morphed into anguished cries, a cacophony of desperation that clawed at her sanity. Only you can decide that, he whispered, a mere breath in the void. In that moment, she realized the clock had stopped. The hands froze at 12, marking her choice a decision suspended in time. Every heartbeat echoed as she stood at the threshold of the unknown. Were the whispers truly seeking help, or did they merely want her to join them? Sarah's heart raced against the dark pull and the specter of dread. She felt the weight of oblivion pressing against her, daring her to step into the void. Was she brave enough to find out what lay ahead? Or was she merely drawing closer to her own destruction? Caught between the echo of the shadow's cries and the stillness of the unanswerable, she took a breath and pushed the door open. What darkness awaited her beyond that entry? The answer drew closer, and she could feel it. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow corridor that stretched into blackness. Shadows writhed along the walls like snakes, darting in and out of sight as if alive. The air was thick with a sickly sweet scent, a mixture of mold and something animalistic that made her stomach churn. Sarah hesitated, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. "Step inside," a voice echoed from the depths. It wasn't he, the man from before. This tone was icy, mocking. "We've been waiting." She stumbled forward, the floor cold beneath her feet. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, but the pull of curiosity and terror drove her deeper into the corridor. The faint whispers grew louder, forming a maddening chorus that wrapped around her like a noose. "Help us! Save us!" What felt like dozens of voices now collided in her mind, making her head spin, each plea merging into a single plea that struck a chord of dread deep within. Who were they? The lost? Shadows of those who had come before? As she walked, the corridor seemed to pulse, the flickering lights above barely illuminating the path. Graffiti peppered the walls, scratched messages telling her to turn back, words like doomed and forgotten. A chill ran down her spine. She was not the first to step into this nightmare. Suddenly, the laughter erupted around her, a low, echoing sound that set her teeth on edge. It twisted through the air like smoke, piercing the veil of whispers. The shadows shivered, drawing back, revealing a small room at the end of the corridor, a door that looked untouched by time. "Go ahead, Sarah," the shadowed figure from before murmured, now echoing from the dark corners of the space. "Open it. Find your truth. Bring light, if you dare." Heart racing, she reached for the handle, her hand trembling. The moment she touched it, a jolt surged through her, and images flooded her mind, faces twisted in horror, a frantic fight for breath, the stench of smoke and sweat. Her own screams echoed within the labyrinth of her thoughts. These were the lost souls, desperate and trapped in an eternal void. They needed something from her, but what? A memory? A secret? The door swung open, and in an instant, her senses were overwhelmed. A burst of blinding light spilled out, stark and pure, pushing back the shadows like a wave. She squinted against it, trying to focus, but the light was enveloped in the howling of the trapped. In the center of the room stood an old, cracked mirror, fogged and dusty, yet within its surface, a reflection flickered, distorting and twisting. At first, it showed only her face, pale with terror, but it shifted. She gasped as the faces of those lost appeared, each one staring back at her like a silent scream, pleading. The laughter grew louder, and as the mirror continued to ripple, a feeling of dread washed over her. The warmth of the light felt suffocating now. They wanted her to see. They needed her for something darker than simple truth. "What do you want from me?" she breathed, stepping closer, heart racing. Suddenly, darkness surged forward from all sides, trying to pull her back. Panic gripped her. It was not just the shadows she had to face, but the weight of her own choices, her own buried guilt. Outside, the winds howled like the crying souls within. The light flickered. "Are you ready to challenge the abyss?" whispered the shadows surrounding her. "Will you join them?" Her breath accelerated, heart pumping like a drum. She gripped the edge of the mirror and leaned closer, feeling an unseen force drawing her in. She had to confront whatever truth waited there, but was she willing to pay that price? The whispers turned into a roar, drowning out her thoughts. And then, all went dark. What secrets did the mirror hold? What was waiting to engulf her in that shrouded silence? The shadows wanted an answer, and so did she. She could hear the deafening silence. It wrapped around her like a thick fog, smothering. The frantic whispers were gone, replaced by a sense of consuming emptiness. Sarah blinked, trying to adjust to the dark, though she felt no sight would clear her muddled thoughts. She pushed against the weight of dread sitting on her chest, searching for a doorway, a form of hope. But the light was gone, the mirror was gone. She was alone. "Are you ready?" A voice slithered through the shadows, teasingly soft, the sound curling around her thoughts. It felt familiar yet tainted. A chill raced down her spine as she recognized the tone. It was the same icy pitch that had beckoned her earlier, dripping with malice. We've waited long enough. Her heart raced again, every beat thunderous in her ears. She tried to summon courage but felt paralyzed, caught in this void that seemed to taunt her very existence. "What do you want from me?" she shouted into the abyss, her voice trembling. Fear twisted in her gut, growing fierce. "What do you think?" came a chorus of voices, layered and haunting, echoing off unseen walls. "Your truth or your choices? You decide." She moved, the cold floor cutting against her bare feet. Instinct kicked in, and she forced herself to stumble forward, hands outstretched, desperate for contact with something solid. Every breath tasted stale and acrid, while her mind spiraled back to the mirror, those faces, those twisted pleas. Each reflection still felt imprinted, like shadows creeping behind her eyelids. A flicker of light sparked in the distance. Hope flickered like a flame, fragile but alive. She rushed towards it, the dark swirling around her like angry waves threatening to pull her under. "I have to find it!" A sudden surge of determination flooded her, pushing her feet into that unyielding darkness. With every step, the whispers intensified again, echoing around her, overlapping. Join us, I refuse!" she yelled, but doubt lurked at the edges of her mind. Her legs felt heavy, as if the darkness was trying to chain her. She stumbled, falling hard against something that felt like a wall, damp and slick. Panic clawed at her throat as she pressed against it, trying to find a way up. Suddenly, the laughs returned, rolling over her like crashing waves, oppressive and sick. "You think you can run? Face your fate, Sarah." She squeezed her eyes shut, focusing hard on that fleeting flicker of hope. "Get away from me!" She had to find a way out. The light seemed to pulse and expand, matting against the surface of her eyelids. She opened her eyes slightly, squinting. It was the edge of a doorway, the threshold shimmered just ahead, barely blazing through the smog of shadow. "I can see it!" she shouted, lunging forward. The moment she took a step, a hand whipped from the darkness, grasping her wrist tightly, hurling her backward. The pressure of fingers wrapped like a vice gripped her, and a chilling voice whispered in her ear, "You cannot escape the truth." Fear sliced through her. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but those whispers blended into her mind, clawing for attention. The darkness pressed in, brazenly mocking her determination. She felt herself being pulled into the void, every part of her body straining back towards that feeble light. But was it even real? Did it matter? She fought against it desperately. With one final, fierce cry, a sound of pure defiance, she yanked her arm free and bolted toward the shimmer. What awaited her on the other side? The truth she feared? Or was the darkness all there ever was? She hurtled through. Wind whipped past her, dragging her into a swirl of light and shadow, consuming all that she was, until the light melded with dark, and the world around her was just a chaotic blur. And then silence fell again. But not for long. The door behind her swung shut with a resounding thud, slamming into place with finality. The only sound left was the unmistakable laughter that echoed through the air, reverberating coldly. What horrors lay behind her? What truths awaited her on the other side? And would the abyss dare to whisper its secrets again? A sharp hiss cut through the silence, the air thick with an unsettling tension that clawed at Sarah's mind. Blinking against the blinding light, she found herself in an unfamiliar room, an unending expanse of white walls and flickering fluorescent bulbs overhead. The floor was sterile tiles, polished but cold beneath her feet. She gasped, scanning for movement. Alone again. But the belly of dread twisted tighter as she realized she felt watched. Instinctively, she took a step back, seeking comfort in the shadows she had just escaped. Sarah. The voice boomed from somewhere close, wrapping around her like a serpent. Welcome to your reflection. Stop it! She shouted, her words trembling, each syllable echoing off the walls, a desperate plea against the growing terror. Who are you? A shadow flickered at the edge of her vision. She turned, but nothing solid emerged. Just that sound laughter, chilling and bright, yet deceptively sinister. No one, the voice chimed sweetly, and everyone. You've chosen the path, and now the truth begins. Her heart raced like a trapped animal, an instinct told her to flee. But where to? The room felt like a labyrinth, void of doors or windows. It was a cell built from her own fears, containing all the darkness she had tried to escape. Your choices, Sarah, the voice taunted, weaving through the space. They brought you here. Do you regret them? Regret? She hissed, her breath quickening. I regret nothing. Laughter echoed brazenly through the hall. Suddenly, scenes erupted around her, vivid flashes of her past, the mistakes she had made, the faces of loved ones she had hurt. Each memory screamed accusations, dragging her deeper into despair. Remember the mirror? The haunting voice crescendoed, and she gasped, clamping her hands over her ears. Everything you see, everything you touch, it was always there. The walls pulsed, images dancing in front of her, flickering like an old film reel. She saw herself, a younger version, laughing carelessly, blending into chaotic scenes, parties she left too early, friendships she abandoned, lies she told to protect herself. Each visage of her past became darker, more grotesque, twisting into the shadows that seemed to bleed into the walls. No! She shouted, it's not me! Please stop! But the laughter grew louder, haunting, breaking like waves crashing against her sanity. You seek to escape? The voice morphed, dripping with disdain. You must confront the monster that is yourself. Face your darkness, Sarah. With desperate urgency, she pressed against the walls, searching for a way out, her hands trembling. Frantic whispers wrapped around her, drawing closer, suffocating her resolve. You can't hide from who you really are. Enough! She screamed, feeling the ground shift beneath her. The walls trembled, and for a fleeting moment, the white flickered into shades of black. Then, through the murkiness, a familiar glimmer emerged. The shimmer from before a beacon of hope or a cruel trick? It pulsed, calling to her with a siren-esque song. Without thinking, she lunged toward it, her heart pounding as chaos surged around her. Each step felt like dragging through syrup, the weight of her choices pinning her down. She reached out, grasping for the light, but it flickered and dimmed, disappearing before her eyes. No! Please! Her voice cut through the whirlwind of darkness with raw desperation. Then silence enveloped her once more, heavy and suffocating. In that oppressive quiet, she sensed movement, creeping shadows elongated and twisted, forming hands reaching for her. What truth would they reveal? Was there a way to make peace with her past, or would she feel the sting of consequences forever? A question lingered. What awaited her if she dared to embrace the shadows once more? A chill ran down Sarah's spine, as the darkness seemed to pulse like a living thing. The whispering shadows slithered closer, their touch icy against her skin. Each breath she took was a fight, the air so thick with dread it felt almost tangible. Panic etched its way into her heart, pounding relentlessly against her ribcage. Sarah, embrace it, the voice coaxed, slithering around her like smoke. Let go of the light. No! I refuse! She spat, her voice breaking. With a desperate surge of will, she squeezed her eyes shut, blocking out the darkness. But memories clawed their way back, raw and unfiltered. She saw faces twisted in grief, friends she abandoned flickering like pessimistic mirages, always there, always reminding her. Why can't you just face it? The voice hissed, growing sharper, more insistent. Look what your choices have done. They haunt you. Struggling for breath, Sarah tore her eyes open, scanning her prison for answers. The shadows loomed and converged, A whirlpool of despair she couldn't escape. The white walls seemed to ripple. They turned into reflections of her past, her wrongdoings dancing mockingly before her, each snapshot, each instance of hurt flaring up with vibrant colors of regret. She stumbled back as one memory emerged bolder than the rest: her best friend, Sarah Jane. The betrayal stung like salt in an open wound. She had chosen to side with someone who relished power over loyalty. That choice had cost them everything. Look at her! The voice chortled with glee. See how your selfishness carved a chasm between you? You wanted to shine, didn't you? But there's nothing beautiful in darkness, is there? No! She shouted, but her voice felt small against the laughter that echoed in the sterile room. The laughter twisted into a frantic chant, shattering her already fragile composure. She turned her back on the memories, but they followed her, remorseless. With every step backward, another flickering scene reached for her, clawing at her sanity. She slammed her hands against her temples, desperately trying to mute the screams of her conscience. The shadows crawled over her, tightening like a vice. Fear seeped into her bones and she staggered, a whisper of dread curling around her heart. Face your choices, Sarah, the voice rasped, now a sinister lullaby. Or risk being trapped in the reflection of what you could be been, forever. What do you want from me? She croaked, her voice faltering, surrendering to the panic. Will you choose your fear? It continued, the tone a silky, sinister melody. Or will you embrace the darkness? I can show you a world beyond this pale light, a world where you can truly be free. The shadows danced before her, beckoning with twisted, clawed hands, offering a false promise of salvation. But to take their hand meant to betray who she was, to drown in darkness rather than confront it. As if sensing her hesitation, the shadows exploded into a tempest, swirling around her with a vengeance. The air crackled with energy, a storm of dread threatening to consume everything. A door appeared in the distance, its outline shimmering like a mirage. It felt unreal, beckoning her to escape. But could she turn her back on the darkness, on the very fears that chased her? With every ounce of strength left, she took a step toward the door. A voice screamed from behind her, a cacophony of her past, trying to drag her under. Don't run away from your truth. But it was too late. She was on the threshold, eyes wide and heart pounding. The door was ajar, glowing with promise. Then she hesitated, feeling the weight of 1,000 memories pressing against her. Was she ready to confront everything she had avoided? Just before stepping into the light, the shadows surged one last time, whispering secrets. Only she could hear. What had she been hiding from all along? Would the light lead to freedom, or to an even darker place? All she could trust was the pulse of fear in her veins, and the question lingered on the tips of her fading thoughts. If she walked through that door, would she step into salvation or doom? The moment Sarah stepped through the door, the air shifted. A blinding light enveloped her, sharp and surreal, the shadows retreating as if recoiling from the brilliance. But as her eyes adjusted, fear sliced through the euphoria. It wasn't salvation she had found, it was just another nightmare. The room was different now. Gone were the sterile walls, replaced by flickering fluorescent lights overhead that cast eerie shadows on the grimy floor. She found herself in a narrow hallway, the flickers of the lights amplifying her unease. The walls were adorned with peeling posters depicting people with unnaturally wide grins, their eyes hollow and vacant. A chilling chill tightened around her shoulders. Stepping forward hesitantly, Sarah noticed she wasn't alone. Faint whispers flickered in the dim light, coiling around her like a serpent. The hushed words were indistinguishable, but she could feel the weight of their intentions, a deep, throbbing need that scraped at the edges of her sanity. She pressed on, the hum of an air conditioning unit buzzing eerily in the background. Each step echoed like a heartbeat, unnaturally loud. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, filled with doors that seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as if alive. With each breath, she felt the shadows creeping back, lurking just beyond the corners of her sight. A door stood slightly ajar to her right, its handle tarnished and cold. Compelled by an unseen force, she edged closer, peering into the darkness beyond. Inside, a figure sat hunched over, bathed in a sickly green light. It was a woman, her hair matted and wild, dressed in tattered clothes. "Help me," the woman croaked, her voice a dissonant harmony of despair and anger. Sarah hesitated. Something about the woman's presence felt both magnetic and repulsive, pulling her towards the unfolding horror while pushing her away from the truth of her past. "Stay away from her!" a deep voice roared from further down the hall. Sarah turned to see a man standing in a doorway, eyes wide with terror. "She lies. You can't trust her." Sarah froze, caught in the crossfire of conflicting emotions. The woman's eyes glinted with a frantic urgency that sent a shiver raking down her spine, while the man's stance was impossibly solid, safeguarding her from the unknown. "Why shouldn't I?" Sarah demanded, feeling the panic rise with the temperature in the hallway. "Because," the man gulped, visibly choking on his words, "she took everything from me." "She will take you too." The woman's laughter erupted like glass shattering, slicing through the tension, drawing Sarah's gaze back. "He's afraid because I know your truth far better than he does." Pulses of fear raced through Sarah's body. "Truth? What truth?" With a scream, Sarah stumbled back, her heart racing wildly. The shadows of her past clawed at her resolve, battering her from every direction. The fluorescent lights flickered again, buzzing wildly. Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her, a solid pulse beating through the floor. Just then, the woman's figure shifted, growing larger, contorting into an impossible shape, a grotesque hybrid of the lost and the damned. She turned to run, adrenaline propelling her forward. As she sprinted down the hallway, a cacophony of voices swirled around her, taunting her. Each door she passed seemed to whisper her name, begging for her attention, begging for release. "Don't run from us!" came the harmonized chorus of the trapped. And just like that, the walls closed in. The hallway morphed, twisting and curling into unrecognizable patterns as if it were consuming her. Sarah dashed toward another door, praying it would lead her back to what she didn't know, but anything was better than the shadows hungry for her past. As she flung the door open, a soft light poured in, revealing a scene both familiar and chilling. In the center stood Sarah Jane, her expression torn between anger and betrayal. "Sarah, why did you leave me?" she asked, the words puncturing through the thick atmosphere, anchoring Sarah in a moment of pure dread. "Because I had to survive." But even as the words left her lips, the truth clawed at her heart. Hadn't she chosen her own darkness? Outside the door, the shadows spiraled in tight circles, waiting. Would she step back into the darkness, to take a chance at confronting her past? Or would she embrace the light of memory and live with her choices? With a deep inhalation and a heavy heart, Sarah made her choice, but the light flickered dangerously, and she could almost hear the darkness snickering behind her. What awaited her on the other side, judgment or redemption? As Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, she stared at the agonized expression of Sarah Jane, the girl she had once so carelessly abandoned. The shadows twisted around her, fervently gnawing at the edges of her consciousness. Faces blurred in and out of her mind, their whispers urging her either to run or confront the reality of her decisions head-on. Time hung taut, the air crackling with tension. Each second stretched on as she stood, frozen in a sea of memories, the good, the bad, the ones she had tried to forget. "Why did you leave me?" The weight of Sarah Jane's question settled like an anchor in the pit of her stomach. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes, a sharp sting cutting through the remnants of bravado. "Because I couldn't face the truth," she murmured, her voice cracking. The shadows pricked at her skin, demanding recognition, a reckoning for the ways she had hurt the ones who loved her. Sarah Jane was the embodiment of all the sorrow woven through those choices. "Face it with me," Sarah Jane urged, stepping closer, her form illuminating a flickering hope amidst the gloom. "There's power in facing what you're afraid of. We can't keep running. You have to choose." The darkness pounced, weaving through Sarah's legs, pooling up like water ready to overflow. The laughter echoed again, both menacing and mocking. "Run back to the shadows, Sarah. You've made your bed." "No!" The denial forced its way from her lips, fueled by desperation. She took a step toward Sarah Jane, feeling the warmth of hope radiate from her best friend, like sunlight piercing through the opaque fog of her fears. I'm sorry for what I did. Sarah's voice rose in intensity. I never meant to hurt you. Each word was a brick, building a bridge from her past to this moment. Then let us confront the dark that clouds your heart, Sarah Jane said softly. We both felt its weight. Weakened together, the shadows writhed angrily, drowning the light with furious snarls. Their voices merged into a maddening hum. You can't escape your past. You must pay the price. I want tea, Sarah shouted defiantly. The shadows surged forward, swirling around her, forcing her to confront the depths of her darkness, the hidden fears that had plagued her all this time. The ground trembled beneath her feet, the light flickering in response to her resolve. She could see fragmented images of hands reaching for her, voices lost in despair, but at that moment they blurred. The reality of her choices materialized before her eyes: betrayal, abandonment, guilt. Determined, she stepped closer to Sarah Jane, embracing the memory of their friendship, the laughter, the warmth. I choose to fight this. I choose the truth, even if it hurts. As she proclaimed her decision, the shadows recoiled, their rage mixing with confusion. The atmosphere crackled again, the light shimmering brighter, swirling like fire. Somewhere deep within, she felt the clench of truth loosen, spilling warmth that chased away the coldness gripping her heart. Together, Sarah Jane's voice echoed, uplifting and strong. Let us face them together. Strength surged into Sarah, ignited by discussions long buried. She felt the guilt transform into power, fueling her choices into hope. The anguished whispers morphed into cries of courage, flooding her mind with clarity. As they intertwined, Sarah Jane reached for her hand. It felt as if the light from their union shattered the darkness. The shadows shrieked in defiance, swirling faster, but a beam of incandescent brilliance emitted from their joined hands, forcing the darkness to yield. Face what you've become. The shadows screeched, their auras flickering. You've painted your past in shades of gray. Do you dare step into the light? I dare, Sarah asserted firmly, grasping at the memories laden with grief to transform them into lessons learned, not chains holding her down. I won't be defined by them anymore. Suddenly, an immense power surged forth as the light from her and Sarah Jane melded, illuminating kaleidoscopic colors in a bright spectrum of hope, a blinding white that pierced through the encroaching darkness. As Sarah took the final step into that ethereal glow, she felt the darkness shattering around her like brittle glass, a flood of whispers now reduced to silence. In the eye of the storm, they stood embracing the changing tides. A twinkling warmth enveloped them, unfurling like wings. Sarah could finally breathe. She felt reborn not just as who she had been, but who she could confidently choose to become. The shadows dissipated, their threatening laughter fading into a distant echo. Sarah opened her eyes, blinking against the sunlight flooding the world around her. Everything felt fresh, renewed. She had faced her demons and emerged triumphant. Thank you, she breathed, looking at the shimmering light where Sarah Jane had stood. Always. The promise lingered in the air, even as the vision faded. With a trembling heart, Sarah stepped forward into the world anew, feeling lightness where darkness once choked her spirit. This was her chance to reconnect with those she had lost, to rebuild what had been shattered. She felt different, whole in a way that didn't ignore the past but fully embraced every part of it. And as she left the remnants of Maplewood behind her, she made an unyielding vow to carry that light wherever she went, ensuring that she would never again allow shadows to imprison her soul. Life was a choice. And now, she was ready to make her own. As the screen fades to black, remember, our choices shape our destinies. And so the story of Sarah continues, not only as a cautionary tale of the past, but a beacon of hope moving forward. But before we conclude, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Show your support because it really makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what happens next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us spread the word together.